Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Orthodox Spirit. I am here with Jack. Jack is here talking to me about addiction and a lot of the resources he does to help people that are struggling with addiction and not only addiction, but the things that come along with it, which is like depression, anxiety, feeling alone. Jack, can you give a little bit of an introduction about yourself?
Yes, of course. First of all, thank you for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity to kind of spread our message. My name's Jack. For anybody who doesn't know, I run the Pull Podcast, which is an addiction-based podcast. We try to bring awareness and education as well as guests with powerful stories and, the resiliency, sort of like the phoenix rising from the ashes, the comeback story, which is super inspiring for people trying to spread that positivity. There's a lot of negative stuff that exists out there, and podcasts like that one and this one, for instance, is extremely inspiring for people like myself. I need as much positivity in my life. You made a wonderful point on the introduction that, like, the addiction usually comes as a result of some mental health issues as well. It's very common these days to have co-occurring disorders, things of that sort. And at the end of the day, like, we use drugs and alcohol to cope with things. And, I always want people to know that there is hope. I got sober when I was 34 years old, and, I thought my life was over. And I thought, because I didn't get it when I was younger, that I had blown up a career, and I didn't think it was going to be possible. But, you know, the cool part is you just trust, right? There's a deep amount of blind faith that goes along with trying to get sober, because it's very scary, but you can't let fear hold you back, right? I mean, the
Right.
fear was paralyzing, and that was also another reason why you continue to use substances, is because we have trouble facing life on life's terms. However, there are a lot of people that have done it before us, and the cool part is if you actually listen to them, trust what they're saying, and do what they do, you can have a life beyond your wildest dreams. Like, I didn't even think, looking back on it in retrospect, I don't think I actually started living until I got sober. I was
Yeah.
kind of just like a passerby in life. And, one thing that's super under the magnifying glass at the moment, the fentanyl crisis, right? It's a little early. I do want to mention it though, because I don't know when this will come out, but we are in the process of starting a nonprofit organization that's called recoverordie.org. And that is a fentanyl awareness primarily platform. But we will use all the proceeds from any donations or t-shirt sales or events and things that we do to put on for our community and educate people. We'll be spending to put towards Narcan, handing out Narcan, having panelists for education. We plan to do charity events. We plan to, scholarship people into sober livings and treatment centers, whatever they need, people that maybe can't afford it otherwise. And so, it's, I want to shout out Clean Cause too, even though we aren't associated with them one bit, but they were kind of the inspiration behind that in my mind, because it's like a yerba mate, like energy drink sort of thing, but 50% of their proceeds go to people in recovery. And when I was in sober living, they were handing out checks to put people into sober living, and I thought that was the coolest thing. So, big shout out to everybody that's doing their part in this thing, and quite honestly, like, I feel like I was put on this planet to try to move a message. When I got sober, they always told me it's attraction rather than promotion, and you got to make it look good. And it's not one of those things where you stand on a soapbox or anything. But I think we live in a different age today with the digital era, people recovering out loud, things of that sort. And quite honestly, like, this is like my soapbox, I guess you would say. This is where I can. I don't mind breaking my anonymity for it. I'm proud to be somebody in recovery. I feel like I am a survivor in some way, shape, or form. And to be honest with you, like, I don't think there's enough. I think if there were more people, recovering out loud, the stigma wouldn't be as big as it is.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of the stigma too, a lot of the times a lot of people find it hard to look at it like a disease, and a lot of the times it's looked at like it's like a choice per se. How do we get people to understand more of the side that it is a disease, it is a mental health problem, and that isn't as easy as you just saying no to it sometimes?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and one that I'm sure everybody is asking, especially if they are not an addict or an alcoholic, because
Right,
I can imagine I'm putting myself in their shoes, and I hope they'll be able to do the same after this interview for me. But putting myself in their shoes, I would imagine it'd be like, just don't drink then, and you won't have
right,
the consequence. Just don't use then. Well, so it is in the DSM-5, right? It is a diagnosed disease or disorder, excuse me. Um, and there are many different versions of it, whether it's depending upon your drug of choice, but there are many different versions of it. And but for alcohol, which I can only speak on, because luckily I never went down the drug route, but I used alcohol like a drug. So the way I see it, it's all the same. Is it's a two-part thing. It's a mental obsession and a physical allergy. And there was a doctor, Dr. Silkworth, that wrote something called the doctor's opinion, I think 80 or 90 years ago at this point, where he described the phenomenon of craving, which is like, a normal person would drink alcohol, and if they start to feel some type of way and maybe they don't like it, they can put it down and walk away. An alcoholic like myself, it has the way he described it was an allergic reaction. And that
hmm
allergic reaction essentially means like it creates this thing where I don't know how much I'm going to drink, but I get this like ping in my brain that says you get more of that, right? And I don't, at any given time and any time I pick up, I will never be able to moderate how much I drink that night. And in addition to that, that's the physical part of it, but the mental obsession part is the worst because, at least for a guy like me, because you're not okay until you can have that drink again. Like I obsess over it. It's an obsession. And if
hmm
anybody knows about obsessions, like, I mean, you can use it in I mean, there's a lot of people that suffer from a lot of different things, whether it's eating disorders or sugar, caffeine, right? People run on
right,
caffeine these days. So, like, imagine like if you didn't have your cup of coffee. Well, then in some ways, that's a very small version of what it probably feels like for somebody like myself. Once I put a drink in me to say, I can't have another one or something, right?
right.
Um, it is hard to understand. And like, listen, I wish we could have I wish there was a way you could experience it, and maybe we will, and with AI and virtual glasses at some point. But I feel like it's in your brain. So unless you're one of us, it's really, really hard to describe. I just know that I couldn't stop if I wanted to, and when I did finally want to, I couldn't.
Hmm. Yeah, and another thing I wanted to touch on too is you mentioned that mental craving part. A lot of times, like people will get clean and then they do relapse, and because of that one relapse, they feel like they've thrown it all away. How do we keep somebody like motivated or maybe reassure them that they're not kind of throwing their whole sobriety away over like a mistake that happens down the line?
No, you're looking at a guy with a ton of relapses in his story. I mean, I relapsed 4 years before I really started taking this thing seriously. I mean, I was going to meetings for about 4 years, but you can't get this thing by not doing the work, right? I'm in a
Yeah.
12-step program. I don't speak for them by any means, but I'm in a 12-step program that actually ended up working for me. But I went to these meetings because I heard hope and I wanted that. And I saw these people with happy lives and they were laughing. They were joking about the bad things that they had done. And it was almost like they're making light of a situation that things I would never even think to bring to light, right? I thought I was going to the
hmm
grave with a lot of this stuff, and to find out that there are other people that are just like me and they found a way to get through it, like, you know I'm glad I knew that was the solution. It just took a while for me to do the work, and quite frankly, whether you stay sober for a day and then relapse, and then 7 days and then relapse, and then 24 day or 28 days and then relapse, and then just whatever you do, you just can't stop trying, because your body thanks you for every day you don't put alcohol in it. Trust me, even that one day was probably a nice little rest for your liver, for your pancreas, for every organ in your human body. Like,
Right.
and yeah, I mean, listen, especially guys that, have a decent chunk of sobriety, whether it's 10, 20, 30 years, and then they relapse, you don't lose all of that. You may have to set in 12 step, we, have a recovery date, and you set that, and that ends up being like where you say that was the last time that you had to ingest anything. But it doesn't mean that that was like your whole experience. Like the way I see it,
Right.
like hopefully you learn something. And the power of the program that I work is that it's our experience that is our power, right? It is our experience in which provides somebody a roadmap to do it as well. So without the variety of people's stories, including people that have relapsed, it may not be not now all they do is have another like tool in their tool belt to show somebody that like you can also come back from it, and there's no shame. People are happy you're back because at the end of the day we know where this leads, right? Jails, hospitals, and
Hmm.
institutions.
Right, right. Yeah, and I wanted to, the reason I even asked to do this interview is because like drug use and stuff like this isn't really talked about too much in the community, like around me. It's something that it needs to be spoken about and given more of a safe place to talk about, or else it's really, really hard for people to get clean or find a place to get clean. And especially with fentanyl nowadays, fentanyl is really like it's running rampant. It's all over the place. We're out here in Southern California. It's really bad. How do we like kind of give? I want to say from parents' perspective, their kids a safer place, or to begin that conversation of, like either be careful of it, and because this is out there, or on the other hand, if they've already started to use, like giving them a safe place to be able to speak to them about it and try to get some help.
Sure. I mean, that's a very loaded question in the sense that like I do believe that there are a lot of resources out there for people, and the fact that usually the family, alcoholism and drug addiction is a family disease, right? That even if it's just one addict in the family, it's the whole family that it's affecting. I don't know about you, but I grew up in a family where we didn't talk about our problems outside of it very much, right?
Right.
Everything stays in the home because everybody's worried about shame. Everybody's worried
Hmm.
about how it's going to make them look or appear or anything along those lines. Listen, man, I didn't ask to be an alcoholic. I
Yeah.
found out that I'm grateful to be one these days, but like I didn't ask for that. And quite frankly, the people that are using, listen, I mean, the scariest part about the fentanyl thing is there's a lot of like athletes that get an injury, right? They're not even like they spent their whole life not using substances at all, have a leg injury or some sort of injury, get on these powerful pain meds, which Purdue Pharma and a few of these other companies that were pushing these things on anybody like you could go in with some back pain and you get some narcos and some other things. It's so
Right.
quick to become dependent on it, and then when they yank them back, all of a sudden, like they don't know what to do, and so they turn to the street. And listen, fentanyl, the cartels, and everything else. I mean, it's a cheaper drug. It's a synthetic heroin essentially, but it's like I don't want to throw out arbitrary numbers here, but it's like, 1,000 times more powerful than heroin. Not just
Right.
that, but they're mixing it in every drug, right? So it's in meth, it's in, there's even been signs that it's been in some weed if you don't get it from a dispensary. It's like, it's in Molly, it's in Coke, it's in everything that you want. It's like all these pressed pills, right? These cartels have these pill presses that make them look exactly like whatever they want, whether it's a Perk 30 or whether it's a some sort of Vicodin or, Norco, like these, they literally will make the pill look almost exactly the same, including Xanax, right? You go and get a
Hmm.
Xanax, you think you're going for somewhat of a downer and an anti-anxiety, and then you get hit with this. And they don't measure, they're not chemists. And so each pill, they call it the cookie chip effect, right? The chocolate chip cookie effect. So you could break a pill down and half of it might not have any fentanyl in it, and the other half might be all fentanyl. But
Hmm.
like, so there's kids that will break off a chip and then they test it, right? There's the fact that there is even these tests out there on the street, I'm glad that they exist. However, that just shows you that it's just a bigger problem. And it's kind of like, I don't know. It's like throwing darts at a dartboard. It's like, how do we get these people to stop dying, right? It's the same thing as like
Right.
Narcan. It's like everybody should be walking around with Narcan. And that's scary because I've seen people just fall out right in front of me. And it doesn't even have to be the typical, druggy looking kid, right? There are people um like ourselves or our parents that are highly addicted to things, and it's just not safe, man. And anytime, do not get anybody that's listening, do not get drugs off the street. It's not worth it. You're playing Russian roulette with your life, and it's not worth it. You're also looking at a gnarly addiction, even if you survive it. Ugly, so I guess the next thing, part of your question was saying resources and things of that sort. Well, if you're on fentanyl, the chances are that you're probably going to need a detox, right? And so you can look up detox centers near you. There's a lot of websites that exist that you, like you could call an 800 number and there's usually a call center on there that can help somebody get to the right place. Certainly you can always message the Pull podcast or any, I'm always willing to, like, we're constantly online. I believe that's how we've been communicating for the last few days. It's like
Right.
I'm on it like a text message, unfortunately, almost to a detriment. But like, people call. We have there's an 800 number associated with it. There's, you can find us online anywhere. And, even if you just want to talk, honestly, like it may not be able to, talk because of like time zones and stuff, depending on when somebody needs it. But certainly call people back and whatever it is. And there's a lot of people out there. Find your local AA meeting, or find your local smart recovery meeting, or find your local refuge meeting. Go someplace where people are about their recovery and only want to help. That's the cool part, is you go to those things and everybody wants to help you. Like you're the star
Right.
of the show when you show up. It doesn't feel like it, but everybody's like cheering you on because they're psyched, because they're gonna get to watch you transform your life if you stick with it.
Yeah, yeah. I know, even like I said, in my case, we spoke before that this brought me back to church, you know. There's always been that like the higher power looking over the whole situation, you know. And another thing too that I wanted to just touch on with you is sometimes people find that when they are getting clean, that first bit of time, yeah, they're sober off the actual like the physical detox, but there's still that mental like depression and like super like down feeling where they feel like, man, like this isn't getting any better. What's some advice to somebody kind of going through that little portion?
Yeah, yeah, man. Allow yourself some grace. Allow yourself some grace. I heard somebody say that the other day, and it's like, you're deserving of grace just as much as the grace you give everybody else on a daily basis. Like, a slow recovery is a good recovery, and you're not going to feel good every single day, but it takes a while for the brain to rewire itself. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen overnight, and we call that the pull, right? Because it feels like a pull, like it's tugging on you to go do something bad, and it's really hard to say no to. It's that internal dialogue where you're like, I'm never going to make it anyway. I don't deserve this. It's like this sabotage mentality and all these things that, like, that I'm sure very common with people, that, it messes with your whole emotional state. Like, I don't know what to say, but you need to rewire your brain, and the synapses need to fire differently and create new neural pathways.
Right.
I'm certainly not a neurologist or anything along those lines, but I've heard somebody say that, like, your brain, it's like slides, right? So like when you feel an emotion, all of a sudden you're like, I usually go use, and I usually go use, and you've dug that neural pathway so deep into your brain that, like, that's just your default reaction. So I would say be careful of your reactions. Try to find a pause in there somewhere where you can just, take a couple of deep breaths. I found breathing to be very, very helpful for somebody like me in early recovery, just because, it does slow your heart rate down. It calms the mind. It's good for you. I forget the name of it now, but the Iceman, the guy that does all the cold plunges. Oh gosh.
Joe Rogan?
Well, he does that, but the gentleman who created these breathing exercises,
Oh,
I
okay.
try to do, and he'll sit in the water for minutes, and almost probably half an hour or something, and the temperature in his fingertips will never change because of the way he breathes. It's a trick.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah, that's
and,
crazy.
and don't quote me on that. Go look it up. I'm just trying to remember his name. I drawn a blank, and I'm disappointed.
Yeah. No, yeah, and it seems like from my understanding of you and from my understanding of a lot of people that's spoken about this, it seems like you need to replace that addiction with something. You can't just get clean and not replace that. Whether it's the way you cope, whether it's that free time, something needs to take place of that. And trying to find things that do replace it, that do keep you engaged, doesn't always seem like the easiest thing to do, especially when you first start getting sober.
Yeah,
Um,
man. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I hope I didn't interrupt. I apologize.
no, 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 you're good. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, I mean, that's probably one of the biggest things. It's like try to find a hobby at the very least, right? A little get well job, something that's not too stressful, but maybe gives you somewhere to go each day. It's routine is super important to people that, haven't had structure and accountability around them for a while. Usually people that are using drugs and alcohol don't have any structure or accountability, right? And so to develop a routine around that, whether it's getting up and making your bed, taking a shower, we're going to the gym, doing this, doing that, meal prep, whatever, go to your job, come home, but like hit the pillow sober. Like that's all really helpful. That's only the first stage of it though, because the exciting part, if you stick around long enough and do it long enough, what you will find is you will find your purpose in life, which is what happened for me. And I didn't even realize that I was going through life like one of those. I don't want to be negative about it and call them sheep, but like I wasn't necessarily conditioned to thinking I could do like my parents told me I could do anything I want, but the school system certainly didn't. They told me I was a dumb kid and I would never amount to anything. And you need to be in these special ed classes and you get bad GPAs and you need to go to summer school and you're lucky if you graduate and you'll never amount to anything if you don't apply yourself and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I'm living proof that that's not the case at all. And, and now that I found my purpose, there's no such thing. It doesn't even feel like work anymore. Like I have the coolest life ever,
Right.
and that's literally God, in my opinion. God has absolutely shown me that He had a plan for me, and unfortunately, it took me needing to blow my life up so bad that I got to rebuild it from scratch. And not just that, but like then he was like, "You're ready, and here's your purpose, and this is what you're ready to do." And because all I've done right for the last whatever decade or 11 years is the only thing I've done right is keep showing up every single day. Like I don't even I'm a business owner and I never went to school to start a business or do anything along those lines. I get support from people in meetings and I watch other people do these things and then I just try them. It's like, dude, you know, you got to try. You just got to keep trying, man. And like all I'm responsible for is showing up. I always say that I am responsible for the action. I am not in the outcome business. I'm in the action business. I'm not in the outcome business. There's
Yeah.
my will and then there's God's will. Sometimes they line up. A lot of times they don't. But when it's in God's will, it's always better than what I had planned.
No, absolutely, man. Yeah. And I guess the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is if anybody's, like I said, looking for help or need to find some resources other than the obvious of like Googling, some detox centers around them. Can you maybe throw some out there? Or if also on the other side of things where maybe after detox, where whether it's therapy or communities or groups that can help them with the process, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of, there's a lot of, oh gosh, I mean, I don't feel, I feel weird getting specific, to be honest with you, right?
No worries. Yeah.
Because that implies that I know what's best, and I don't because every situation's a little bit different, and like the last thing I would want is to steer somebody wrong. But I would say a good place to start, honestly, is like obviously the SAMHSA hotline's a good one. If you're having issues with suicidal ideations or things of that sort, 988 is a brand new number that's nationwide. 988 is a suicide hotline. You can talk to somebody there. There's counselors 24/7. That's a wonderful, wonderful resource that I think is underutilized. And let's see. So I would say go to recoverordie.org. There's definitely a contact button in there. That's our nonprofit that, we're not fully up and running yet, but hopefully by the time this comes out, it will be, we're a few weeks away, I would say. But like there's, other than that, you can Google, detox centers near me. I mean, they all have to be, they're all state regulated. I'm not saying they're all created equal or anything along those lines, but
Right.
there's a medical doctor and somebody like that, that's at least a place to start. But there are a lot of really good recovery centers. I mean, certainly you can go to pinpointrecovery.com, which is also, a website that's in the process. It's sort of like a recovery.com. It's like Zillow, but for treatment centers, right? And so you could go on
Yeah.
there and find all your options and stuff. There's an 800 number on pinpointrecovery.com. Please feel free to call that. We'll get back to you if we don't answer. We're building the call center out. There's a lot of things that still need to happen, but I don't want to not mention it because I know eventually it's going to be helping a lot of people.
Right. No, well, thank you so much for taking some time out and talking to me about all this, Jack. Seriously, I appreciate it, and good luck to all your future help to people and everything you were doing out there, man. Keep up the good work. It's really helping a lot of people.
Thank you, my brother. God bless you. And we got to get you on the pool podcast. I don't know if you're ever up in the Bay, but it would be great to have you on. I would love to hear more about your story. I know, like I said, your channel's a little bit more focused on the religious aspect of it, and quite frankly, I have a lot of that in my background too. So I think it would be a cool conversation to get you up here. So let me know next time you're in the Bay. We'll stay in contact, and until then.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Thank you, bro. Have a good one.